Perfect. Okay, as I told you last week, we finished with dialogues, with the first section, or the part A of the first section, which is listening. So now we're going to continue with about extended conversations, which is the part B of the first section. Let's start with this. This section has longer conversations. If you remember on the previous section, we listened only to two people and they only said two phrases. And then a third person asked a question. Now, these conversations are a bit longer and they last from 30 to 90 seconds. Okay, from 30 to 90 seconds. Okay, this is always preceded by a brief introductory comments. Okay, you will listen something like the narrator telling you like where is this going on or things like that. And after each of the conversations, there are from 3 to 5 questions. So now you will have to answer from one audio 3 to 5 questions. Okay. The questions are always separated by a 12-second pause. Is exactly the same as the previous section. And there are two longer conversations. Always from the 5 that you have to listen, there are always 2 that are a little bit longer than the rest. Okay, these comments tells you which questions the conversation refers to and provide some brief information about the conversation. So normally, this is how the questions are going to start. For example, listen to 2 students talk about their psychology class. So when you start with the conversation, or with the dialogue, I'm sorry. Let me just accept the other person. Okay, so when you start listening the first audio, you will listen something like, listen to 2 students talk about their psychology class. So you can have an idea about what the dialogue or the conversation is going to be about. Another example would be like questions 31 to 35. Listen to a conversation about plans for a class trip, etc. Okay, so here we have, these are just examples, okay? And you will always listen from what number to what number is this dialogue for, okay? So these dialogues are not only going to tell you what is the dialogue going to be about, but it will also tell you how many questions you will have to answer with this audio, okay? So for example, let's check an example of this first conversation. You will hear something like, listen to a conversation between 2 students. Bill, you're a physics major, aren't you? That's right. I need some advice. I want to take an introductory physics class, and I have to choose between 2 teachers, Professor Hunter and Professor McVeigh. Do you know much about them? I have taken classes from both of them. To tell you the truth, I don't really like Hunter's style of teaching. He doesn't seem to care if his students understand or not, and his lectures are pretty dry. Well then, what about McVeigh? I've heard this course is difficult. It's not easy, but you'll learn a lot, and he always encourages his students to ask questions and join in discussions. Okay, so as you can see, now we have more dialogues, not only 2 phrases, okay, and it's actually obviously a longer conversation. Then the question will be like, what does a woman ask Bill to do? You have the 4 possible options. Giving her information about 2 teachers, help her with a physics assignment, speak to a professor for her, or lead a discussion. What do you think the answer is?
I'm not so sure, but maybe a letter A?
Yes, very good. She is asking for the two options that she has, teacher Hunter and teacher McVeigh, and she is asking for an advice. Okay, she's asking her friend to tell her like what he knows about the 2 teachers. So she's asking about information to make a decision. And well, Here's the explanation of why letter A is the answer. Okay, so let's start with conversations. They are very similar to part A in dialogues, okay, but they are just longer. They frequently take place in a campus. This is important. They take place in campuses or setting between two students or between a professor and a student. Okay, so what is this? Normally, all these audios that you're going to hear are between these kind of people or two students or a professor and a student, and normally they are always in a campus. So this is going to be the vocabulary that they are going to use. Remember that I told you the first class that this exam is based on university vocabulary. Okay, so as
Yes.
you can see here with these conversations, we continue talking about the same.
Okay.
So what kind of questions will you have to answer when we're talking about these conversations? Okay, now we have three different types of questions, which are topic questions, questions about setting, for example, time and location, and finally, questions about the speakers. What are these? If we're talking about a topic question, this will be like, what are the speakers discussing? So let's think on the previous example. What were they discussing? Okay, they were talking about or asking for an advice, or they were talking about two teachers. Okay, they were discussing which teacher is better. That's the topic. Now, questions about setting, time, and location. If this is, for example, about when is going to be an exam, so we're asking about a time. For example, where did this conversation take place? Or when did this conversation take place? Okay, so it's obvious that we're talking here in a college or at a university. So that would be the location. And finally, questions about the speakers, like who are the speakers? It could be like two professors or the professor and the teacher or two friends, etc. And what is the probable relationship between the speakers? Okay, so these are going to be the type of questions that you're going to find on the TOEFL. Okay. Now, this is another important thing. The first question after the conversation is often an overview question. What is an overview question? Do you know what is an overview question?
Yes.
Good. So we're talking here about everything in the conversation, not specific parts of the conversation. Okay,
In general terms, what is it
that's right.
about?
Like in a summary, what were they talking about? Okay, and it involves like what both speakers say. Okay, so these are the three type of overview questions, and we're only talking about the first question for every conversation. So it is always important to listen carefully to the first few lines of extended conversation to answer overview questions because this part of the talk often sets the scene. It often establishes the time and location of the conversation and the identity of the speakers and the main idea of the rest of the conversation. So always pay attention to the first lines, okay, the first few lines of these extended conversations because they are going to help you to identify which is the overview topic, okay? So, according to the conversation, detailed questions ask about specific points of view in the conversation. The answer will usually be containing what one speaker say, and detailed questions follow the order of information in the conversation. In other words, the first of these questions, let's this refers to a point made early in the conversation, and the last ask about a point made near the end of the conversation. Okay. So most detailed questions are factual questions, and the answers are directly stated in the conversation. Many factual questions begin with the phrases according to the man and according to the woman. So, number one, I said, let me do it here. Number one, you're going to listen a conversation, and after the conversation, you have the first question, which is an overview question. Okay. After that question, question number two is going to be a detailed question. So what is a detailed question? Okay, it's a question that is going to ask you about something in specific that a person said during the conversation. You can identify these questions because of these two phrases. When you read these two phrases on the question, according to the man or according to the woman, you know that that is a detailed question. What is important here is that I'm telling you that detailed questions always says something at the beginning of the conversation, the first person, and the second person says something at the end of the conversation. Maybe they were deciding something, like an example that we have just checked. The person is taking a decision about which class is she going to take or with which teacher. So at the end, that was pointed at the beginning of the conversation. But at the end of the conversation, she has to take a decision, and she actually says, "Okay, so uh, Professor McVeigh is going to be my teacher." So she's giving you like the answer at the end of the conversation, but the question is actually at the beginning. Okay. Now there are some or a few detailed questions that are inference questions. Remember inference questions? We said that inference is when they don't mention, okay, or they don't say that information in the dialogue, but you need to understand the information or to conclude what they are talking about. Okay, so obviously these questions are like, what can be inferred from the man's comment about, or what does the man imply about, or what will the speakers probably try to do. Okay, so with these phrases you're going to identify which detailed questions are inference questions. Remember, for this type of questions, you need to understand the whole dialogue. So, what are the tips that I can give you to practice for these conversations? Number one, be familiar with the directions. It's something that you're doing by doing your exercises. So, don't worry for that. Okay, pay attention to the introductory comment of each question. As I told you, they say, listen to a conversation between two students, or listen to a conversation where I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hay algunos alumnos que no se pueden conectar, no sé por qué. Give me a second. Okay, sorry. Let's continue. Okay, so I'm sorry. we're back. Okay, so first of all, as I always said, be familiar with directions. Okay, pay attention to the introductory comment, which is going to tell you most of the information about it. And as always, if you finish soon or as choosing your answers, try to preview the following answers. Okay. Now, when you listen to the audio or to the conversation, listen for overall concepts. For example, who is taking part in the conversation? Okay, is it a boy and a girl? Is it a teacher and a student? Who are talking? Okay, where and when does the conversation take place? What is the main topic of the conversation? Okay, and remember that normally these three questions are always mentioned on the first lines. Okay, on the first lines of the conversation. Okay, while you're doing this part of the exam, you are not allowed to take any notes, to write something on your paper or on your exam or anywhere else. Okay, you have to always just pay attention and try to remember everything. Okay, remember that the audios are not repeated. Okay, as soon as the audio finishes, answer items right away. Okay, do not waste time. And one more time, always guess. Okay. If you don't know the answer, just guess and keep going. Okay, after each extended conversation in part B, there are 4 or 5 questions. And as I said, usually the first sometimes is an overview question. This is like a summary of what we have just checked. Okay, and then we have detailed questions, which are normally questions for a specific information that they said in the conversation. Okay. Okay, so what are the most common overviewing questions for the extended conversation? I said, what is the main topic of this conversation? What are these people primarily discussing? Where does this conversation take place? When does this conversation take place? What is the relationship between the speakers? What is a man's or woman's occupation? And what is one speaker's attitude toward the other speakers? Okay. So now let's start how to answer detailed questions about extended conversations. So most of the questions are detailed questions. Remember, the first question is an overview question, and then most of them are detailed questions. Okay. So they need you to understand like most of the dialogue. The majority of these questions are factual questions. What are factual questions? Questions about facts. I mean, actions or things that they said they were doing. Okay. Now, we said also that there are other questions that might be inference questions. And remember, these questions are not mentioned or are not described in the dialogue. You have to understand the whole dialogue to answer these questions. Okay, now this is important also. The answers and the questions are in order, always. They are in order, okay? So if you're listening to the audio and at the same time you are answering your exam, remember the answers are in the order that you listen those answers in the dialogues, okay? So this is a lot of help. Well, this is like very much helpful for you. They're in order. Okay, now also notice that if something in the conversation is emphasized, okay, it will probably be asked about. If you listen in the audio that a person says something like, wow, really? He is doing some emphasis. I'm sorry. So as the person is doing emphasis, that is very likely that you will have to answer a question about that. Okay. So another form to do emphasis is to repeat the sentence. Okay. Okay, so if, for example, if I said, I love you, and then the second person says, did you say that you love me? They are repeating the information, so it's pretty sure that you will find a question about it, okay? Or another option could be the tone of voice, as the examples that I have been doing. Okay, like el wow, or yes, I really, really love you. So those are like tone of voice, repeated sentences, okay, or emphasize. If you notice those things in the dialogue, that means that you will have a question about it. For example, it says, my project for my filmmaking class took me 6 weeks to finish. 6 weeks? I can hardly believe it. Doesn't the teacher realize you have other classes too? So in this case, if you listen to this dialogue, as you can see, the first speaker said 6 weeks, and the second speaker repeated. He said 6 weeks, and it with an exclamation mark. So he's doing emphasis. So you can be really sure that there is going to be a question like, how long did the man's project take to complete? Okay. Okay. Girls, do you have any questions here?
No.
That's good. Let me go to the next part. Okay. So, girls, that would be everything about extended conversations. So, repeat, it's exactly the same as the part A, but we just have to listen a little bit longer dialogues. Okay. And one more time, it's the same type of questions about topic questions, detailed questions, and inferred questions. Now, then we have part C, which is mini talks. Okay, this is the part C of section A, listening, and we will listen to a mini talk. Okay, so these are monologues. So what is this? That you will only listen one person speaking. Okay, and the first two dialogues or first two sections, we listen to two people talking. But in this case, we will only listen one person talking from 30 to 90 seconds. Okay. And as the same as the previous or the part B, we will have always this conversation preceded by an introductory comment. So remember, these introductory comments are important. So these comments always tell you which questions the mini talk refer to and provide some brief information about the conversation. As the previous part, we have, for example, questions 15 to 40. Listen to a lecture given at a botanical garden. Or questions 11 to 15. Listen to a talk about university housing policy. Or question 15 to 38. Listen to a lecture given in a history class. Okay, so this is the example of an introductory comment before the conversation. So you will listen, for example, you will hear, listen to this lecture given in a university classroom. Students, this evening we'll have a chance to observe a phenomenon that we have discussed several times in class. Tonight, there will be a lunar eclipse. As we have said, when an eclipse of the moon occurs, the Earth passes between the sun and the moon. Therefore, the shadow of the Earth moves across the surface of the moon and obscures it. Because you won't be looking at the sun, it is not necessary to use the special lenses and filters that you need when observing a solar eclipse. You can observe a lunar eclipse with your innate eye or with a telescope and photograph it with an ordinary camera. So if the weather is not cloudy tonight, go out and take a look at this eclipse of the moon. I'm sure you will find it interesting. Okay, that will be the first mini talk. One more time, as you can see, you have only a monologue. It's only one person talking after, obviously, the introductory comment. So then we have the question, and the question is, in what course is the lecture probably being given? What do you think? Philosophy, meteorology, astronomy, or photography?
Letter C.
I'm sorry?
And letter C? No, astronomy?
Yes, very good. Letter C is the answer. That's right. We're talking about eclipses, we're talking about the moon, the sun, etc. So the most probable thing is that the class is about astronomy. Second question. This question is about the same dialogue we have just listened. According to the speaker, which of the following occurs during a lunar eclipse? The Earth's shadow moves across the moon. Clouds block the view of the moon. The moon moves between the Earth and the sun is too bright to be observed without special equipment.
Maybe letter C.
Letter C?
Letter C?
Oh,
Come on, girls. The Earth's shadow moves across the moon.
okay.
Okay? That's right. The other one, the moon moves between the Earth and the sun. That is a solar eclipse. Because the moon is covering the sun. Okay?
Yes.
And well, on the dialogue, there is a phrase that says, the shadow of the Earth moves across the moon and obscures it. Okay, so it's not literally the same phrase, but it's very similar. Now, the talks. Let's talk about these mini talks. What are they about, or how are they normally used? Okay, number one, they are always formal. If you remember on part A, when we were talking about dialogues, I told you that dialogues are informal and that we might listen idiomatic expressions, phrasal verbs, and those kind of expressions, also contractions on dialogues because dialogues are informal. But when we're talking about these mini talks, they are a little bit more formal. So the vocabulary is going to be a little bit more difficult or more specific. Okay. Also, these monologues or these talks resemble lectures given as a part of a university course in history, literature, or biology, for example. So as you can see, you will might listen. For example, in this case, even if you don't know what is or what they say on the dialogue, if you know a little bit of science, okay, if you know a little bit of history or U.S. history, you might be able to answer the questions. Other mini talks resemble talks that you would hear at a university, but not in a classroom. For example, you might hear talks about a campus organization, registration procedures, or the services at the campus medical center. Okay, so not all the mini talks are about classes. They might also be about other things. Okay, I said like campus organizations, registration procedures, or a medical center in the campus. Now, there are also some mini talks that have nothing to do with university life. Okay, it's not very common, but you might find some of those dialogues. But they could be about, for example, a tour guide speaking to a group of people, of tourists, or a curator speaking to visitors in a museum. Okay, so one more time. As you can see, if you're a tour guide or if you are a curator in a visitor's museum, you will always talk formally, okay? And the information that you are going to give to the people, or that you're going to listen that that person is giving to the people, it's always like about science topics, okay? Or more scientific information. So one more time, in this case, for mini talks, we have the same three types of questions, which are overview, detail, and inference questions. Remember, overview about everything that was mentioned in the dialogue, detail questions about a specific information that was mentioned in the dialogue, factual, obviously about facts mentioned in the dialogue, and finally, inference questions. Questions about something that was not mentioned or said during the mini talk, but that you must understand about what was said. So what are going to be the type of questions? Number one, we might have a question about a topic, main idea of or purpose questions. For example, what is the lecture mainly about? What is the speaker mainly talking about? What is the main idea of this lecture? Why is the speaker giving this talk? What is the main point of this lecture? Number two, questions about setting, like course, time, and location. Like in what course was this lecture probably given, like the previous example that we have just made. Where was this talk probably given? And when was this talk probably given? And finally, questions about the speaker. Who is the speaker, or what is the speaker's occupation? Do you have any questions about these questions?
No.
They're clear? Perfect. So let's start with the overview questions. One more time, remember always, you might answer the overview questions about introductory comment. And if not is in the introductory comment, always listen to the first few lines, okay? To answer all these overview questions. For detailed and factual questions, they will always ask about specific information. And one more time, they follow the order. They follow the same order as the dialogue or the mini talk. Okay? One more time, remember, detailed questions are normally factual questions most of the time, and they are always mentioned in the dialogue. Normally, these questions begin always with the phrases according, it says according to the speaker, what, or according to the lecture, something. Then we have inference questions, which one more time, they are questions that are not directly stated. And the questions could be like, what can be inferred about? What does the speaker imply about? And what is probably true about? Now, as always, you will always have 4 answer choices. Okay, and normally all of them are plausible answers for the questions. Usually the answer choices are mentioned in some way in the talk. Okay, usually the 4 of them are mentioned. As with the conversation, it is better to read over the answer choices in the exam while tasting, so that you can preview the answer choices to look away or close your eyes. Okay, so one more time. Before the audio starts, try to read the answers and then try to focus on the audio, okay? Now, in general, for tips for this topic with mini talks, get familiar with the directions, pay attention to the introductory comment, preview the answer choices, and listen for overall concepts. One more time, who is giving the talk, where and when is the talk being given, And what is the main topic? Sorry. Topic or purpose of the talk. Pay attention to the first few lines of the talks and answer right away. And as always, guess. Okay? So now let's work with anticipating questions about mini talks. What is this? Remember, as the idea is that you are going to read the answers before you listen to the audio, you need to imagine what the question is going to be. Okay? So if you read the answers, you might have an idea about what you have to pay attention for. Okay? For example, if the 4 answer choices are the names of places, okay, if you read the answers and they say at a school, at the mall, at the cinema, at their house, you know that the question is going to be where. Where are the speakers talking? Okay. And if you read that they are telling you like tomorrow, tonight, yesterday, and next month, the question is going to be about when. When are they going to do something? So for homework, guys, you have to do part C. Okay. It's also on the platform. You are going to do part B and part C exercises. Now that one was about the questions. Now let's do some exercises about overview questions with mini talks. Normally, when we're talking about overview questions or the first question of every dialogue, okay, it's normally an overview question. To answer these type of questions, you need to understand the whole talk. So the questions for mini talks are going to be like, what is the main idea or main point or main topic of the lecture? What is the purpose of this talk? Where was this lecture given? When was this talk given? In what course was this lecture given? What is the speaker's occupation and who is the audience for this talk? So always when you listen main idea, main topic, or main point questions, they are always to summarize the talk. So what is the good thing here? Incorrect answers for these questions are usually too general, too specific, or incorrect. Too general, too specific, or incorrect. Okay, so if you read the answers and the answer is too specific, like it's giving you like every detail, the most probably is that that answer is incorrect. Okay. So although these questions require an overall understanding of the talks, the first few sentences often set the scene. So always try to pay attention to the first sentences because they establish the time, place, and main topic. So for example, we have, listen to this dialogue. Good morning, everyone. As you probably know, this class is a continuation of the course that began last term. Last term, we focused on American writers of the 19th century. Today, we'll begin our study of 20th century novelists with a look at Ernest Hemingway. So from this introduction, we know that, number one, the speaker is a teacher. Number two, we know that the audience is a group of students. The course is in an American literature. And the talk will concern Ernest Hemingway. So as you can see, all these information is given at the beginning of the dialogue. Okay, and they are normally not very detailed. Next, well, it's a six. Well, yeah, let's do it. Let me see. Give me a second. Okay, girls, we're going to do this exercise, okay? Before I continue, I would like you to do this exercise so I can continue to give you more details. Here we go. Can you please go to the platform and let's try this exercise. Give me a second. Okay, girls. We already checked part A dialogues last week. And today we're talking about part B, extended conversations, and part C, mini talks. Let's start with extended conversations. Please go to this section of your course. And let's skip the first exercise. Let's do number one. Number two, listening to the opening lines of extended conversation and answering overview questions about the topic, setting, and speakers, okay? Which is an example like this one. Like this one. You listen to the introductory and you get these four sentences of information. Okay, can you please do the exercise and let me know if you have any questions or your rates, okay? Go ahead, I
Okay.
will be here if you need it.
Okay.
Good luck.
The class is over, right?
No, Janine, you are doing an exercise, aren't you?
Yes, but you say goodbye or
No, no,
no?
no. No, I didn't. You finished.
Okay. No, 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 no. Almost.
Good.
Sorry, sorry.
I'm finished, teacher.
Perfect, Tanya. How was it?
16.
Good.
No, 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 teacher. I'm sorry. 11 to 16.
Okay, it's not bad. Do you have any questions about the answers?
Uh, mm, I think no.
Okay, that's good.
Was it así como que practicar un poquito más. Me gustaría volverlo a escuchar y escuchar, así como para, este, como el oído, así como que
Ok, ya más de práctica de listening para ti.
ajá, como más de práctica. Ajá,
Muy bien, sí, es importante también. Y de hecho, pues el hacer estos ejercicios te va a ayudar para eso también.
perfecto.
Mm, I have already finished.
Perfect, Jenny. How was it?
8.75.
Okay, that was the score. And how many answers you get correct?
Ah,
You know?
eh, I I got two wrong.
Okay, that's good. Only two. That's really good, actually.
Yes, well, I
Have you?
didn't, yeah,
Tell me.
I didn't get the number 4 and number 5.
Okay.
Then they were talking about something about death,
The deaf people, yeah.
deaf people, yes,
Yeah.
but that was it.
And they were about the same dialogue, right?
Sorry?
They both were about the same dialogue.
Yes, yes.
4 and 5 were about the same. Yeah. Okay, let's wait 1 more minute for the rest and we will continue.
Sure.
Okay, girls, let's continue. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, Mariana and Jenny, we're going to continue. We almost finished actually. Okay, we were doing about overview questions. The exercise was about overviewing questions. Remember, also in mini talks, we have these detailed questions, which one more time are about facts, reasons, places, or dates. And these questions are about things that were mentioned in the dialogue or the mini talk. Okay. Remember, incorrect answers are often mentioned as these are questions. Okay, you have to understand the dialogue, and even when they are mentioned, they are not exactly mentioned word by word. Okay. Questions one more time. It's about something that you must or that you imply from the dialogue or that you inferred from the lecture or mini talk. Okay. Remember, emphasize or repeating phrases is going to give you the answer. If you listen that someone emphasizes something or repeated something, there is the answer. We have another example. The previous one was about 6 months working in a project, and this one says, now in the days of the California gold rush, the journey by ship from the East Coast to San Francisco took about 6 months. Can you imagine that gold seekers spent 6 months at sea just getting to California? There will almost certainly be a question about how long. In this case, one more time, as we can see emphasis or that they are repeating the phrase 6 months, we can imply that this is going to be the answer. Okay, well, we have another exercise in homework, and we'll explain this in a minute. So basically, as you noticed today, I was repeating the same information, okay, a lot of times. Basically, extended conversations and mini talks are basically the same. They have 30 to 90 seconds length, okay, both. But the first difference is that extended conversations, you will listen to speakers talking. And in mini talks, you're going to listen only one person. It's a monologue. Okay, so you're going to listen one person talking. And we have exactly the same type of questions. Okay, and remember, you have from 3 to 5 questions. The first question is always an overview question. Then we have detailed questions about facts that were mentioned in the dialogue. And finally, we have an inference question where you have to see or imagine or understand the whole dialogue. And as I said, both parts on this exam are using formal language, okay, as they are normally used in a university, okay? So it's exactly the same for both parts in this section. And with this, we finish with the listening section. So actually, the longest section is part A. It has more things to identify or to be careful with, like we said, like homophones, etc., and minimal pairs, words with similar meanings, or words that are spelled and spelled differently but pronounced exactly the same. Okay, so I just want to make clear that extended conversation mini talks are basically the same. Okay, try to understand these type of questions, and that will be great for you. Now, next class. Okay. We're going to continue with the structure. Okay, today we finished part B, extended conversations, part C, mini talks. And you will have, I'm sorry, you will find 50 questions for the listening section. From those 50 questions, 30 or 55 are going to be about dialogues, 10 to 15 are going to be about extended conversations, and the last 5 or 10 are going to be about mini talks. Okay, actually, you're only going to listen to 2 mini talks on your exam. Now, after this, I told you next class we're going to continue with the structure and written expression. Okay, we already finished with listening section. But in the middle here, we have an exercise or another part which is called mini lessons for section 1, idiomatic expressions. Remember, when we were checking dialogues, I told you about these idiomatic expressions, which might be phrasal verb or idioms. Okay, and you need to know which phrasal verbs and which idioms are on the TOEFL. You need to learn them and practice them. How can you do this? Because we're not going to have a class about these idiomatic expressions. It's just vocabulary that you need to practice and practice and practice and practice. Okay. So number one, the first thing that you can do to learn these idiomatic expressions is on the right side menu here on the platform. Every time you enter, you find a word here. Okay, it is a random glossary entry, which is, in this case, for example, it says make a point of. It means make an special effort. So this is the meaning of this phrase. Okay, every time you enter or you reload the page, you're going to find a new day. Every take the class, that word, and try to. Time you're entering to the class, the first thing you can do. Okay, try to pay attention to the. Okay, so for example, as you can see, I reload the page and now I have a different phrase, which is all of a sudden. Okay, which means all at once or suddenly. Now, this is like very slow, okay, because you only see one word every time you enter the page. So if you want to check the whole list where it says idiomatic expressions about glossary, this section, okay? If you open idiomatic expressions and vocabulary glossary, it's like you'll find here the list of all the phrases that you need to memorize or learn for this double exam, okay? So here you will find one by one and they're in alphabetical order, a breeze, a far cry from, etc. And if you want, you can here use this browser so you can find like, okay, phrases with letter J. Or any other letter you want to see, okay? So it's up to you. You decide if you want to look for phrases in a specific order, or if you by letter. Okay, that's one. So when you open, let's see that you're for section 1, idiomatic expressions. Okay, so when you choose one of these exercises, you're going to find that on the instructions, it says that before you do the exercise, which is this is the exercise, know all of the phrases that you need to know before doing the exercise, okay? Check the list. If there is one that you don't know, go back to the glossary and check for that phrase before attempting the exercise, okay? After you check all these phrases, now you can do the exercise and answer it. In every exercise, starting with their own words or phrases that you needed to learn. Okay? That's it. That's what we'll have to do with this section. With the middle lesson, because there's nothing I can teach you about it. They are just phrases that you need to know. And as I said, some of them are not how can I translate it literally because they are like idiomatic expressions, they're idioms. Okay, you need to know that. About the idiomatic expressions and how are you going to proceed with these exercises? No questions? Yeah, now that's it for today. We'll finish really quick. Okay, if there are questions about, I think we're done for today. No, or even with the definition on the platform, you don't know what's the meaning or how to translate it in Spanish, send me a WhatsApp and I will be glad to answer you, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Have a good night.
See you on Thursday.
Teacher.
Good evening.
See you, bye-bye.
See you on Thursday. Bye.
Bye.